Hey everybody, my name is Mason. Welcome to Mason Writes and Reads. This is the first video on this channel. The whole idea behind what this channel is going to be is kind of dedicated to talking about literature, talking about books, and just talking about storytelling in general so that we can all improve our craft. This is really kind of an outlet for me to express some of my thoughts and feelings about writing. If nobody watches any of these videos, it's really, not the end of the world for me. I really want to get things off my chest, and I feel like, making content is an enjoyable way for me to do so. So that's kind of what this channel is going to be all about. So this first video, I'm going to be talking about internet writing advice and how it helped me and how it also led me astray in a lot of ways, and the many things that I had to unlearn from the internet. I think it's really interesting because we live in this, era where we have so much available right at our fingertips. I've learned so much through, just YouTube and Google and just looking things up. If anytime I encounter a problem, whether it's something like complicated techie wise, or if it has to do with like fixing a part on my car or whatever, just, Googling things is a really great resource nowadays. And we just have so much at our fingertips. And I don't know how other people like to, dive into hobbies and different things like that. But when I first get into any new thing, like I always run to the internet, and, whether that's for good or for bad, but, I often hop onto YouTube or hop into Google. And, when I first got into writing in like 2018, I hopped around on the internet and started looking up, YouTube videos and things, and came across a lot of stuff. A lot of here's, top 10 tips for becoming a writer, and top 10 things you shouldn't do, and, stuff like that. You know exactly what I'm talking about, these types of videos. And a lot of that is because I don't have a formal, background in writing. And it took me a while to know like what I'm allowed to do, what I should and shouldn't do. And the idea of this video is I want to talk about how we can kind of shortcut a lot of that, without needing to engage with a lot of these videos, a lot of these rules that might box us in. And, I acknowledge first and foremost that the video title is a bit hyperbolic, and some of the stuff that I'm going to be discussing is a bit hypocritical because I'm making a video on the topic, engaging with it myself. So, that out of the way. I think one of the first things to like think about is just how the YouTube algorithm works, and being aware of it is a really big thing. How a lot of these social media algorithms work. And I think that, some of the most popular forms of content are videos that are kind of negative in nature, videos that are like, here's the top 5 things a writer shouldn't do, or here's the, top 10 things that are killing your story, stuff like that. And it reaches just outside, obviously, of like writing advice. This is kind of, this type of video has infested every, style of, hobby or niche or whatever. I went on a recent trip to Germany, and I looked up some things about Germany, and I got all of these videos recommended to me, that were like, hey, here's the top 5 things you should never do in Germany, or the things that you should never say to Germans. It's like, and the reason these videos are so popular, why they get so many views, why they get so much engagement, is because you feel like you're missing out. You feel like you get like FOMO. You feel like you're missing something. You see this top 5 things that are killing your writing, and you're like, oh my God, am I doing one of these things? Am I making one of these mistakes? And so then we run to the video and we engage with it. And I feel like just the idea of do's and don'ts in art form, like writing, something where we're like expressing ourselves, something where we are taking our artistic, approach to the world and putting it onto paper. I think that, the idea of do's and don'ts is kind of ridiculous. But, at the same time, I don't want in any way to like dunk on people that are making these types of videos, or that, I'm sure at some point I'll make some listicle type stuff on this channel. So in no way am I trying to do that. I think that it's just the nature of like these algorithms. If people want to get views, and if people want to, like get people to flock to their videos and to express themselves and get their opinions out there, then they have to make videos like that. It's the nature of the beast. And it's kind of sad that that's the state of, modern social media and stuff, but that's, a whole nother topic. So no way am I like trying to criticize any of these creators that are making these types of videos. I get it. Like it's, you have to do what you have to do to, get views in this modern day and age. And so I understand. No way am I trying to like I said, dunk on anybody that's that makes stuff like that. But I think we can just feel really boxed in when we're a newer writer by a lot of these types of videos that say, don't start a story from the perspective of somebody waking up, or don't start a story with a dream, or, don't tell a story from second person perspective, or don't, make your paragraphs this long, make your chapters this long, blah, blah, blah. I just think that there's so much advice out there, and there's some things that are genuinely helpful and that can give us a good idea of where to start and where to go. But I really just want to encourage with this video, I want to push back against a lot of the concrete do's and don'ts in writing, even if you're a newer writer. And also, this is all within the confines of you want to publish a story, you want to get something out there, you want something that people will read and that's marketable. I think that there's a lot more room for artistic expression than people realize. I think that there's a lot of pessimism on the internet about the publishing industry, about storytelling, about writing, and a lot of it is true. A lot of it is 100% correct, but I think a lot of it is just people that are burnt by the industry, or that have got some negative feedback in the past, that completely say, oh, it's impossible to get a story published. It's impossible to do anything new these days. Stuff like that, sentiments like that. I don't necessarily agree with all of that. I think that there really is a lot of room to express yourself artistically. And so when we talk about videos like this that say, here's 5 things you shouldn't do, I know at least for me, when I got into writing, I felt like I was stepping on eggshells when I'd go to open up a new document, because I would just feel like, oh, I'm making this mistake here, or I'm doing this wrong thing here, or I'm doing this. You really have a lot more room to express yourself than you realize. Of course, the hard part is how your execution is. How are you actually executing this? You can do something original and experimental and interesting and new and refreshing, and you can do really whatever you want. It's just, how do you execute it? How is it enjoyable to the reader? Are you doing it in a way that is good? Are you executing it? That's really what it all boils down to. Now, of course, as a new writer, that's one of the biggest questions is, am I doing it right? Am I executing this concept correctly? I want to tell a story this way. I want to, let's say you're into literary fiction. You want to write a story about a very strange character from a really weird point of view. You want to do something original, absolutely, you go for it, do it. Or if you're into, fantasy, and you really want to create a very original world and do some really interesting things and dive into a different universe completely of your own making, and, you're feeling like you are kind of restrained by a lot of the fantasy that you've read, and, et cetera, et cetera. I really want to encourage you to express yourself however feels best to you, but do it in a great way, execute it well. I think that's part of the problem. And like I was saying, as newer writers, we can often, question whether we are executing it correctly. And, I see that a lot on forums and stuff, where people that are new will ask, how do I know that my writing's good? How do I know if it sucks? And, I really wish there was a concrete answer, but there's really no silver bullet to that question. I think that is learning and becoming a better writer and increasing your taste and reading more, of course. These will give you the skills and the knowledge. It'll help you kind of tune your radar to knowing when writing is good and when writing is not. You'll be writing a paragraph and you'll look at it and you'll go, wow, that's really good. I like the direction the story's going here after this paragraph. Or you'll look at a character that you're creating and you'll say, something's not quite right with this character. They feel a little one-dimensional. I'm not quite hitting the mark yet with this character. And that fine-tuning that radar that'll make you a better writer, but that takes time and that takes energy and that takes effort. So really the idea of this video is talking about really don't box yourself in with what you can and can't do. If you want to start a story with a dream sequence, do it. If you want to have a story with a bunch of point of views when some person on the internet told you shouldn't, don't listen to them, do it. But of course it needs to be executed correctly. And that's of course the hard part. I just think, like I said, within an art form, do's and don'ts are not really always necessarily helpful. I think that the, most helpful thing, rather than looking up 10 things you shouldn't do, or looking up certain listicles about, ways you should improve your writing, is you should just read more. I think that's the biggest thing. That'll help you realize what you can and can't do. That is at least what helped me a lot. It made me really opened my eyes to how storytelling can be done. And read widely, read different genres, read books that you think the concepts are interesting. I just read Northwoods by Daniel Mason. I really love this book, and it basically is not about a character necessarily. It's about a place, and it's about this house in the New England wilderness, and we just focus on this one place, and we see it over this big swath of time through all of its inhabitants and their stories, and it's just it was beautiful. I really, really loved it, and I think that just seeing that and reading more and realizing that, it's like, oh, we don't necessarily have to write stories that are just about a certain character arc following the hero's journey. It really showed me, hey, you can write even just about a central place, and that almost is its own character in its own way. And I know many people are already aware of this, but just reading more really opens your mind to what is possible and what can be done. That was just example of something that I read recently. And so I would definitely encourage you to, don't box yourself in with too many of these do's and don'ts. And I would really encourage you just to read more, to see what's possible, and really do whatever it is you want to do. Develop your own taste. Read more, and when you find sections of a book or you find a concept that you really like, think about, why did I like this? Why did I enjoy this? Why did this stick out to me? Why did I not like this bout of dialogue? Why did I not like this character? And having all of these thoughts and processing all of this will really help you tune that radar that I was talking about, which will make you a better writer, much more than reading any list of what you should and shouldn't do. You can do anything you want. You can write a book that is very heavy on description. You can write a book that's very heavy on character. You can write a book that's really heavy on action. You can write whatever you want to do, but it has to be executed well. It has to be entertaining. It has to be engaging to the reader. And you can only discover how to do that by tuning that radar, by writing a lot and reading a lot. And so I guess really quickly, I could talk about a couple of examples of things that kind of led me astray when I was first getting into writing, internet writing advice that threw me off a bit. The first was that I heard in a ton of videos and read online a ton that people were saying you need to just get that first draft out of your head, and you need to just have this, they call it the zero draft or the vomit draft, where you just get all the words onto the doc or onto the page, and then you can fix it in editing. Otherwise, you'll never get your story done. And for me, that didn't necessarily work. I learned over time that I like to edit as I go, and I like to take my time with my first draft, and that's just me, and you are just you. And so this idea of do's and don'ts for writing, I think that a lot of people that are creating content, it would be helpful if you gave disclaimers that said, like, I think you should do it this way, and that's just me, or something along those lines can be really helpful, because I think sometimes this advice, these tips, these do's and don'ts are written off as fact rather than somebody's personal thing that works for them. And I think that's really an important, an important thing to highlight, an important thing to point out is, like, just because something works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. And I think that, becoming a greater writer is learning what works best for you and learning your own process. And sometimes your process changes from project to project, but always being adaptable and learning what works for you and not boxing yourself in with any of these, pieces of advice can be really helpful. So like I said, that is just me, and you are just you. So we all are just trying to figure this out as we go and become better at our craft. But really, at the end of the day, I just don't want you to feel burdened. I don't want people to be weighed down by advice, by do's and don'ts. It's all about execution. It's not as much about what you should and shouldn't do. Do what makes your heart sing. Do what makes you happy. Do the types of things that you want to express, that you think the world needs, that you are craving more of yourself. Express yourself how you want, but you'll want to execute it well. That's, of course, the hardest part. So that's really all I have. I know this, like I said, was a bit rambly. I had no really plan for how this video was going to go, but we ended up here. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this type of thing, you enjoyed this content, then please consider subscribing. And that's all I have. Until the next one. Bye.